Welcome to a new episode of the Blue Mouse Podcast. My name's Emily. I'm the full-time knitwear designer behind the Blue Mouse. You'll be able to find me on Ravelry and Instagram under that same name. So today I'm doing something a little bit different with the setup. I can't seem to find the pressure release plate for my regular tripod, so I'm using my GorillaPod on a table instead of typical setup. So I'm not sure I'll be able to find it actually. I was doing some videos with some local yarn stores, and so I was switching from my regular tripod to the GorillaPod, which is easier to carry around and do kind of a mobile setup. And now I can't find the original tripod base. So we'll see if this is the future of the podcast for a while. But yeah, it's been a few weeks. I'm very happy to have you here with me. I've missed you guys. I really enjoy this time getting to chat and then talk with you guys in the comments. I've really missed it, so I'm happy to be back. So I want to share with you something that I have recently finished that I'm really excited about. I stayed up to an incredibly stupid hour last night, weaving in the ends and seaming one half of it, and then this morning, or let's be honest, this early afternoon when I woke up, I finished the other half. So this is my Scrappy sweater that I've been working on. You may have seen clips of it on my Instagram stories because I usually like to share what I'm working on, but I'll try and stand up and show you. So this is it. I think it grew a little bit when I blocked, a little bit more than I wanted it to and a little bit more than my swatch. But this is essentially what it looks like. It's a drop shoulder and uses a bunch of different scraps. It has drop stitches here and throughout and in the sleeves as well. So it's a very simple drop shoulder and I really like it. And while I'm already standing up, I might as well show you the pants that I sewed, I think last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know how well you can see them, but these are them. It's the Aeronite pant pattern by Sew Liberated. It was a challenging one, but I'm very happy with the way that they came out. Don't look too closely because there's definitely some things that don't look right, but it's all part of the learning experience, and now I know how to do it better than this first draft, and I can make the second pair even better. So back to this sweater. This is something I have been working on for a few weeks, maybe a month, and I finished it, I want to say almost 2 weeks ago, and then I blocked it and it sat in a basket waiting to be seamed and to have all the ends woven in because that's such a big task. So I'll show you. I saved all my scraps to share. This giant ball of ends is all that I have left from weaving in all my ends and seaming, and it was a long process. So I'm happy to have it done, and I'm very pleased with the way that it came out. I don't typically make drop shoulder sweaters very often anymore because I actually find them to be more difficult than a seamless top-down sweater such as a yoke or a raglan. It's something that I want to get better at, and I think it will take some learning and some practice, and I definitely want to in the future. At the moment, I'm really focusing on learning the ins and outs of a raglan and compound raglans, but then I might either go with yokes or drop shoulders. I'm not sure, but I'm very happy with the way that this one came out. And I tried to do a little bit of armhole shaping with this. The first draft, I can't remember if I did with the first draft, but it's something that I didn't really understand until finishing this design actually and putting it out to my editor and having her kind of explain it to me. So I always thought that when you work a sweater and you decrease around the armhole, that that would decrease the amount that's around your bust. So if you were working something like this, when you decreased, your bust measurement would have to be taken after you decrease, which actually isn't true, I found out. So you basically borrow depth from your sleeves. So like this part of my sleeves, this inch right here makes up for the inch that I decreased, if that makes sense. So I cut over an inch right around the armhole, and even though that shapes it more and provides less bulk under the arms, which is what you want if you're working a drop shoulder, it helps make it fit more comfortably if you decrease the bulk. But then I figured if you take an inch out, then you're taking an inch out on both sides, on the front and the back. That must take 4 inches out of your bust. It's not the case, because you borrow that from the sleeves. So you borrow that inch or however much that you have taken out of the sleeves, and it creates that original amount, if that makes sense. So your cast on circumference, even though you decrease for the armholes, that cast on circumference will be the bust circumference, because whatever you take out in armhole shaping, you'll just borrow from the sleeves and it will fit. So that's just a little tidbit I thought you might enjoy. I do try and tailor this a little bit more towards designing, or this podcast at least. I definitely do a lot of knitting, but most of the things I share with you is through my design process. So I always want to give little things that I'm learning to share with you guys in case any of you are budding designers. And I'm actually going to start doing little videos, kind of impromptu. It doesn't have to be very in-depth, but I think I'm going to start doing short videos where I come and I talk to you guys and just share something that I learned, or just share a tip that I have. I actually think I'm going to film one of those after I finish this podcast. So yeah, I will start sharing those occasionally. I'll do the occasional more in-depth video like I did with learning how to grade yardage. That was pretty in-depth and it took a while to film, so it's a long video. But then I also think I'll balance it by sharing just short little tips that I learn or I find helpful that I think you might benefit from as well. So you can look forward to those on my channel. But yeah, so I just finished this, just finished seaming it like half hour ago and tried it on, and I love the fit of it. That's one thing that I definitely enjoy about this style is the fit. Drop shoulders are like my favorite. Most of the clothes that I wear that are, not handmade or they're store-bought are drop shoulders. So a lot of big t-shirts and oversized clothes. That's most of my style, is just oversized clothes. I find them comfortable. I don't really like tight fitting clothes. So most of what I design is a little oversized and comfortable because that's what I like to wear. And so this sweater is very much like something that I like to wear. And it's my first time doing a rolled hem, which you can kind of see here. So it's just like a short bit of stockinette around the neck, and then with blocking it'll roll. So I essentially just picked up stitches with a needle that is 2 sizes smaller than my gauge needle, and the gauge needle was very big, so this is a loose fitting or a loose knit sweater. So I probably could have gone down to even 3 needle sizes smaller, but I knit maybe an inch of stockinette, and then I bound off a little loosely, but not too loosely, and it creates this beautiful rolled hem, which I have seen in other designs and really, really enjoyed and wanted to incorporate it, but wasn't sure quite how to do that. So I read up on it and incorporated it for this design, and I'm really, really happy with the way it came out. I do like a good ribbed hem, but every once in a while I feel like this rolled hem is really, really beautiful. So for probably future designs with drop shoulders, I think I'll do this a lot. I really enjoy it and I love the way it fits. It creates a wide neckline, kind of, but it's not like falling off your shoulders, which I don't want. I definitely don't like that style where you have to keep hiding your bra straps underneath it because it keeps sliding over. That's not really my thing. I've done it in the past, I'm sure, on accident, but now I try and make the necklines not too wide. So I'm very pleased with the way this one came out. And if you match gauge for every size, there's very little variation in the neck width, which is something I also have learned just probably in the past 8 months or so, 6 to 8 months, is that the neck width doesn't really change much as you get to larger sizes. So it's typical to want to grade sizes and increase a little bit for different sections of sweaters when you're designing them, but there's certain things that don't change a whole lot when you're going up in size. So your bust may increase and your upper arm will probably increase as the sizes go up, but your back neck width and kind of your neckline doesn't really need to increase very much. I think the back neck width increases a little bit, but the difference is not like huge. So it's probably, I don't want to say a number because I don't know, but I think it's not very much. So the same thing goes with your head size. Most people have, I think it's females have a 21-inch circumference and men have a 23-inch circumference, typically. Some people have smaller heads or larger heads, but they're usually around those measurements. And so you don't need to it's not, the wider your bust, the larger your head is and the bigger your neckline needs to be, because that's not true. So it's kind of something I've been trying to work on, is not having to go up very much in neckline size when the bust goes up. So that's a new one that I found very helpful. So I don't know if you find those design insights helpful or interesting at all, but I'd love to know your opinion on it. I find them really fascinating. I especially love when people share things that they've learned in their podcasts. I find it fascinating, and I hope you do too. So yeah, I kind of want to shift a little bit in my business and try and bring more help and more, free insights, free knowledge that I can share on the channel of things that I have learned. And it's definitely a hard balance to strike. I can find myself getting really holding fast to the things I've learned because it's taken so long to learn them that I'm like, no, I don't want to share these insights because it's taken so long to learn them. And I feel like there's a balance between sharing information and having people learn stuff on their own, and I still believe that there's that balance, but I want to try and bring information to you that I'm learning as often as I can, and hopefully enrich your knitting life and maybe enrich your designing life if you are a designer. Some things I think are just good knitting knowledge, not necessarily just for designers. So that's kind of why I want to make little videos for you guys when I can, just telling you things that I have learned outside of just the podcast, so that the podcast can be mainly about knitting and life, and those can be more about just little tidbits of information or interest possibly. So I'm hoping to do more of that in the future, and I might even do just, short little videos where we just talk. It doesn't have to be about knitting, it can just be talking. I know that I'm a Patreon supporter for Christy Glass Knits, and occasionally she'll do a video that she titles something like Knit With Me, and it's just her talking for an hour, and it's so interesting. I love it. I mean, she's a very charismatic and fun person, and I definitely don't have the same energy that she does, but I really love just listening to things as I'm knitting. And I don't just mean knitting content. I consume an ungodly amount of YouTube throughout the week because I love listening to people talk and share about things that they're passionate about or just share about their lives. So I do watch a lot of knitting content for sure, but I do also just consume a lot of YouTube in general, whether that's people sharing about their lives or something they're passionate about. And I find it fascinating to listen to as I'm knitting. And so I was considering maybe every once in a while doing a video similar to what Christy does, where she just kind of talks. And it's nothing new. I mean, there's people out there like Melody Hoffman of Bee Mandarines does kind of a vlog style, which I don't know that I would do that. That's a lot of editing, and to be honest, I'm too lazy. I really don't enjoy video editing, and she puts all these beautiful clips together, and I just don't really want to do that. But I would think it might be fun to occasionally do just like chit-chat videos, just if I'm feeling interested in a topic, maybe just talking about it, and then we can talk in the comments as well. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I don't know. It's hard to gauge. I think it'd be fun just to have a new way to dialogue with you guys, and then there would be more video content as well. But ultimately, it's up to you guys whether you would watch it or not. So anyway, this has veered off away from the knitting content, but I think in the future for podcasts, I might be just a little less structured. I think before it was like, all right, I always have to get into the knitting content, and I always have to do the structure of talk about acquisitions, then whips, then FOs. And while that can be entertaining, I'm sure, I do enjoy podcasts that follow a structure like that, but I also follow podcasts where they just kind of go off the rails and talk about life and talk about things, and I love it. So I don't know, I feel like it might be just more enjoyable to just have it kind of happen and be less structured. I don't know if you guys watch the Chelsea Pearls podcast. It's one of my favorites. I never miss an episode. And I was watching Christina and Miriam. I think they were just sitting in Christina's house just talking, and they always, in every episode, just go so off the rails and just talk, and it's hilarious and so enjoyable. And then they get like half an hour in, and they're like, we haven't talked about knitting yet. And I'm just sitting there totally in love with the way that their podcast works anyway. They could talk about anything, and I would sit and watch because they're just such enjoyable people. I really would love to meet those two in real life. I think that'd be so fun. I don't think they'd be watching, but Christina and Miriam, if you're watching, I'd love to meet you. Maybe I'll come out to Red Bank one time. I'll make a trip out, come see all the yarn stores around that area. God, wouldn't that just be so much fun? I would love that. I was trying to do that in like a month. My husband is going on tour, and he is in a band, or I shouldn't say he's in a band. He started a band and makes all the music. He's a music producer, but he also has his personal project, and that's kind of what he does full time now, is his music. And so they don't tour very often. He mostly just works from home and does social media things and interacts with his audience that way. But they are going on tour, and they're doing the East Coast, and I was like trying so hard to have him let me just not even ride in the van. I'll drive behind my car, but just so that you guys go this way and I'll go to these yarn stores throughout the day and night or whatever, and then we can get a hotel room at the end of the night, and that's when I'll see you. But for the rest of the time, I just want to explore the yarn stores. But he didn't go for it. I think he'd be too focused on my safety, and it would be too distracting, which I understand. But I definitely want to do that. Maybe next year. I really, really want to go to Rhinebeck. It is a huge dream of mine. I really, really want to. So yeah, maybe next year. We'll see. All right, I really probably should get to some of the knitting content. What do you think? It's been so long that I don't really remember what I talked about. Was it almost a month ago? So this has been finished. I love this, and actually I'm looking for testers. I still need testers for, I think I could use at least one for every size. I'm trying to do about 3 slots for every size now, just in case things happen and people drop out throughout the process. I still have, several people for each size. So if you're interested, I believe I've put the deadline as maybe like October 15th. So you have I believe, over 6 weeks. And you might be thinking a fingering weight sweater in 6 weeks, but it's knit at an incredibly loose gauge and all garter. You have some drop stitches, which are still garter, but the rest of it is just really fast, simple garter. I believe I used a US 8, which is a 5mm needle, so super loose gauge. It really does go quickly. There's a little bit of German short rows, which I'll have some videos on, how to do that. You can watch my tutorials. And I've had people in the past who were scared to try German short rows and then watched the tutorials and said it's actually way easier than they thought it would be. So trust me, German short rows are a breeze. I think they're so much easier than any other way of doing short rows. So yeah, if you're interested, you can sign up below. You can leave it in a comment. You can email me. I'll leave a link to the list where you can sign up as well if you're able to use Google Docs. So yeah, I'd love to have you on board. It's always a first come, first serve basis. I don't do any kind of, application process. So it's just whoever signs up first gets the slot. But I would love to have you on board. I really enjoy having testers and just seeing all the variations that you come up with. I used a ton of scraps for this sweater, but you don't have to. You could use just one color, you could use two, as many as you want, or as few as you want. It's totally up to you. I designed it with scraps in mind because the only real scrap projects that I have seen are mainly blankets. I know there's a few others, but the blankets are the most popular ones, and I don't know about you, but I do not have the patience for that. So it's kind of my idea of what to do with my scraps. And I actually found that using shorter sections of color looks the best. So I don't think I went over 12 rows for each color. And it just kind of blends really well that way. I love the way that it looks, and I'd be happy to have you as a tester. So, bringing that to a new project. That sentence didn't make sense, sorry. I was trying to find a way where I was like, how can I keep going without breaking? That brings me to my other project, is I think where I was going with that. But this has got to be the largest swatch I've ever made. It's insane, and I'll explain why. So here's my swatch. It's large. It's long, it's in the round, so it has all these kind of floats in the back, but I'll explain why. So last year I was working, we never had a contract or anything, but they provided yarn support and said you can use it for whatever you want, and so I decided I would use it for a sweater. And this was during that time of year where everything was a blur. I was taking on way too much, I didn't know my limits, and I went way past my limits and then got engaged and had even less time. So this was last summer, and I was working on a eyelet sweater, and the way I had it was, I think, bottom up in the round, like where you work in the round and then you split for the front and back. And I'm changing it up and I'm doing a seamless raglan. I don't know, can you see all the fuzzies of like yarn fuzzies floating in the air in front of me? Probably not. But that's kind of where the first part of this swatch was, is I was just trying out different decreases. So an eyelet is pretty much just a yarn over and then a decrease. And so I was trying a bunch of different options, and a lot of them, like, they kind of puckered and I didn't like the way they looked. And so I finally settled on a way that I did like it to look. But I wasn't really loving the eyelet texture. I wanted something with a little bit more detail, and I was just kind of bored of this. Even as I was knitting it, I was like, I want something with more detail. And so I sat on it, I think for a night, and then I was staring at it and I was thinking, how can I add maybe a purl ridge or something to make it more unique and more interesting? And so I was thinking of maybe adding a purl ridge below and above the eyelet section. So there'd be like a row of purl ridge, and then you'd have that eyelet section, and then another row of a purl ridge. And I don't know, I was still kind of like, eh. So I decided, actually, I was thinking, and I was like, well, what would it look like if after I worked that decrease, I worked a few stitches of a few purl stitches, so I would get a small little purl ridge. And the thing that gave me the idea is that if you've ever seen my Lofoten sweater or seen me wear it, I have it somewhere, but it's buried. It has these details where you work, I don't think they're alternated, but you work like 5 stitches of purl and then 4 stitches of knit, and then you keep going and you repeat that, and so you get these little dashes of purls. And I really like that. So I thought, what if I did something similar to that with this? And so that's what gave me this idea. And that's what I did here, which I don't know how well you can see that. It's really blowing out. But you can kind of see a difference here than you can here. I don't know if you can on the screen. But there's little purl ridges, and I really, really enjoy it. Maybe I can kind of ridiculous, but you can kind of see them there, can't you? And I really, really enjoyed it. And so I was just playing around with the different ways that you could work them, and the amount of stitches and the amount of rows, plain rows in between each like textured row. So I tried like alternating them. So I'd work a textured row and then some knit rows, and then I'd kind of shift everything over so that the eyelets weren't stacked, they were staggered. And I tried that, and then I tried stacking them, and I definitely didn't like the stacked look as much. So here's the stacked look, and it just kind of creates this like, let me see if I can even see it. So it kind of like goes in and then goes out, and you get this like, it looks cool. Like I would definitely make something like it in the future. But what I wanted is sorry, there's so much fluff. But what I wanted is something that would kind of stagger. And what I ended up getting is that the purl ridges kind of create like a stair step effect. And so everything, it looks kind of like a giant spiral. And it looks really cool. So I wrote up the pattern, at least for the yoke, which is the hardest part. Once the yoke is done, it's a breeze, but you really have to get those parts done. So, oh, I forgot I have another whip in here. Crap. All right, just dropping everything. But I have started on it, and here's what I have so far. So I have the yoke fully finished, actually. It should grow a little bit with blocking. I don't think it looks long enough to be a yoke, but this is what it looks like. It's totally blowing out, but you get the idea, right? So this is my first time doing a texture in the yoke of a sweater like that, and it's hard to design. It's hard to increase while trying to keep a certain number of stitches for a stitch pattern. So I believe this stitch pattern, when you're working it flat like that, and I say flat because each part of it, so each sleeve and each front and back, you're not working it flat, you're working it in the round, but because your stitch, I don't know how to describe it, because you've got your seam stitches in between, it kind of breaks up the continuity of the pattern. So each piece, even though they're all worked in one giant circle, is worked as if it was its own piece. That really doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. But basically the stitch pattern restarts every time you get to a new section. So you work as if it's one piece across the front, and then you work your seam stitches, and then you restart, if that makes sense. So when you're increasing, the other thing that makes it hard is that there's different rates of increase. So I am working on a compound raglan, or a kind of a compound raglan. So a compound raglan is where you increase quickly and then slowly and then increase quickly again. And now I'm only doing increase quickly and then slowly. I'm not upping the rate when you get lower. But that kind of makes it hard because when you increase quickly, you're increasing stitches quickly. But when you're increasing slowly, then you're adding stitches at a slower rate, obviously. But it makes it hard to keep the continuity of that stitch pattern because you're not always going to have enough to work a full repeat. And I was trying to figure out, how do people do this? How do people write patterns where they explain it to people? And it's not just super confusing. I don't fully understand that. So I read through some free patterns, some free raglan patterns that I could find on Ravelry just to try and get an idea. And I did have some in my library already that I looked at. And I feel like a lot of times people just leave it up to the knitter, where they're like, increase at this rate while also maintaining the stitch pattern. And I think that's really hard. I don't think I could do that as a knitter, or I could, but it would be really complicated. So I was kind of racking my brain, like, what can I do to make this easier as a knitter? Because it's really simple as a designer to be like, well, yeah, just you guys do these two things at the same time. It'll work out. And not explain how to do it. I totally understand why designers do it. That would make it so easy. But I wanted to, maintain that it's easy to follow. So something that I have decided on doing, and I'm sure that this is not new, it's the first time I've done it, and I haven't seen it anywhere, but I'm sure people do it all the time. So what I'm doing is, I hope this makes sense if you know anything about a raglan sweater, but a raglan sweater has like seam stitches along each seam. So you have, a seam here and here, and then the same on the back, so that you separate the front from each sleeve and the back from each sleeve. And you usually have around 1 to 2 stitches in each seam, typically. It can vary, but typically you have 1 to 2. So for this, I believe I have 2. And so what I'm doing is I'm putting another set of markers in each section, separating the seam from the stitch pattern. So there's a certain amount of stitches that make up the stitch pattern, and then if you increase and you don't have a full number to include in the stitch pattern stitches, say you've got like 2 here, but you need 6 to work the stitch pattern. You can't continue on the stitch pattern for those 2 stitches. So I've put my seam marker here, and then I also have what I'm calling an inner marker, where it separates those 2 stitches that don't fit into the stitch pattern. And so you knit those stitches, and then you work in pattern across, and then you'll have the same thing over here, and you'll work those 2 stitches just as knit stitches. And then when you have 6 in between the seam and the main stitches here, then you can slide that marker over and you can incorporate those stitches into the main fabric, because they'll be able to work a full repeat. Does that make sense? I'm hoping to kind of create some videos to make sure that the pattern is easy to read and that makes sense. But that to me is a hell of a lot easier than just leaving it up to the knitter to figure it out. So I'd love to know your opinion. I feel like that might have just made no sense, but I'll draw diagrams and I'll make videos, and I can kind of show you what I mean right now. So I don't have professional markers at the moment. I just ordered some, but the nice markers that I do have only fit up through a size 7, and I'm on a size 8. So I had to kind of just do some makeshift stuff with different colored string and yarn. So here is my seam. So you can see that those 2 stitches on either side of the pink, those are my seam stitches. And then each pink marker denotes where, those are seam markers pretty much. And then this white marker, which white was a terrible idea when my yarn is basically white, because it's hard to see. But this white marker is my inner marker. So this is a white marker, and this is my seam marker. And you see how I have one stitch in between? That would be the one stitch that doesn't fit within my stitch pattern. So every time you get 6 in that section, you can slide that marker over and incorporate them. So basically you have 2 seam markers and then 2 inner markers for each section. And I'm hoping that that will make it easier to follow. So we'll see. If someone didn't want to do that and they tried to follow the pattern, it might be a little confusing. But I'll draw charts and try and make it as easy to follow without being super convoluted. So I think I'll do a page where I describe how the inner marker works before the pattern starts and then not mention it, really. So yeah, I don't know. It's a hard thing to do. It's super easy if you want to do it just for one size, but trying to grade it for like 11 sizes is where it gets complicated. But I'm trying my best and I hope that it makes sense. So I plan to have this done. I really just have to sit down and figure out the underarm section because I also need to maintain the stitch pattern by the amount of stitches that I cast on underneath the arm. And what I wasn't remembering when I made this yoke is I was not remembering that there are seam stitches. So I need to figure out where the seam stitches play into it and how to do all of that. So that'll probably be either tonight or tomorrow, and then maybe I'll knit it up. Once the body gets going, it should be pretty quick. Not as quick as a wool sweater. I don't know about you, but I am not as fast when it comes to cotton. I don't know what it is. Maybe it just doesn't slide as well or what, but cotton slows me down. Even a wool cotton blend I find is even slower, actually, weirdly enough. So this is using 24/7 cotton from Lion Brand, which is a super affordable yarn. I think if I use all the yarn that I bought for this, it will have been like a $35 sweater, which is super affordable. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it looks like in wool. I made this in cotton because I'm going to the beach in 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks from today, actually. And I want a cotton sweater to wear. And because I love it so much, I just want to share again this little bag that I made a few weeks ago. I'm still on a huge sewing kick. So I'm actually going to finish filming and go to my parents' house and sew. I got a sewing machine from Johnny's aunt. She just wasn't using it anymore, I guess, and gifted it to me. It's from, I think, like the 50s. It's super heavy. It's all metal. And I spent last night trying to figure out how to get it to work, and I did get it to work, but it's a super weird machine, like different than the one my mom has. There are things I like about it and things that are a little hard to adjust to, but yeah, I'm learning how to do like sewing tension and how to get tension correctly. So I'm messing with the tension dials, which my mom always said was like a big no-no. So I'm learning how to do that. But I just really love this bag. It's a weird shape, but I really, really love it. And it fits about 3/4 of a worsted weight sweater. So I feel like once I get to a full-size sweater, it probably won't fit. But for now, it's fantastic and I love it. And I definitely want to make more. I bought a ton of fabric, which is not here yet, but I bought it a while ago. And I'm really excited to make some clothes before the beach. I'm gonna try and go and trace out my own pattern based on some clothes that I like the fit of, and then make a wearable muslin. And if that works out, then I'll use that pattern on the nice linen that I bought, because linen is so expensive that I don't wanna waste it, you know? So I don't have a whole lot else, but I do have a sock. And this is using the same exact pattern that I used in the sweater. And I love that pattern so much, and I was like, what else can I use this in? I love it. I'll probably end up doing it in a hat, maybe even a pair of mittens, because I want to learn how to design mittens, and these socks. So it's kind of going to be everywhere. Maybe it'll be one of those collections where everything kind of goes together. I don't know. We'll see. But this is what I have so far. Wow, this is really blowing out. But it's a little bit of a darker green. This is probably more accurate back here. But yeah, it's a really, really beautiful green. And I have that same stitch pattern that I used on the sweater. So I'm using, what do I typically use? I think a US 1 or US 0, which is, what is that? A 2.25 millimeter needle. And I always use my ChiaoGoo red lace for magic loop. It's my absolute favorite method. And I'm using Old Wire Road Fiber Co. And I'll have to look up the color because I don't remember. But it'll be in the show notes, which I'll have linked in the description. And I really am enjoying it. I've gotten to the point where I think the cuff is done and I'm ready to work the heel flap. And in the past I've been doing kind of a heel flap where I carry the stitch pattern down, and while I love the look of those, it also is very time consuming. So I think with this one I might just use a basic, like, what is it? Something partridge heel. I have partridge heel or something like that, and just do it that way. But we'll see. I'm gonna have those two patterns worked up within the next week, hopefully, if everything goes well. And yeah, those will be my next two that I'm finishing and getting off to editing. And I'm just going to show you a couple more finished objects. I don't remember if I showed these to you, but I did finish my second little tune sweater, which is this right here. Super adorable. I used Autumn and Indigo in her Rosewood colorway. And this was a colorway that I got like over a year ago. And I don't believe that she has it anymore, but it looks identical to a new colorway called Cane. So we just decided that's what we'll suggest because it doesn't look any different. So this is her classic DK base, and it took no time to knit up. DK weight baby sweaters are like the biggest life hack for gifts because people think that they, they're made with lots of love, that's for sure, but people who don't knit probably think that they take way longer than they do, and they don't, which is fantastic. So that is the little tune sweater that I just put out, which is not the newest one. I should probably show you the newest pattern that I put out, but I'll put a code, because I don't think I put a code out when I think it's been too long. So there will be a discount code in the description and the comments for you guys. So yeah, there's a discount code for the little tune. It'll be 20% off probably for the next week and a half, because I know some of you watch this later than the release date. So yeah, that'll be out and off. And then I also put out a new pattern for my sea oat sock, which is a really fun and simple texture. Again, blowing out. Probably should have put the blinds down a little bit. But it's a simple heel flap and gusset, and I carried the stitch pattern down to the heel. And this is a free pattern, so you can find this on Ravelry now for free. And I hope you enjoy it. It's kind of my two gifts to you this summer. Is I really wanted to share a couple free sock patterns with you. So I shared the Craggy Shores and then the Sea Oats sock. So this was using Brianna's yarn, in hers is the Little Wolf Knits, and I used her colorway Beach Grass, and that's kind of where the name came from because sea oats are kind of like a beach grass. And then actually the last thing I had to share is I finished my second sock of my second pair of Craggy Shore socks. Very, very blown out. But whatever. That's just all I had to share with you guys today. It's a long episode. I was feeling chatty. So thank you for sticking with me. I'm really happy to have you guys here. I'm really grateful that you want to watch me sit and talk for, what has it been, like 40 minutes or something, and that you want to knit my designs, that you want to hear about everything new that's coming out. That's really nice, and I'm very grateful to have you guys here. So thank you. I wish you all the best. I hope you have a fantastic Labor Day weekend. Is it Labor Day or Memorial Day? Oh gosh, shouldn't have said anything. You know what I'm talking about. I believe it's Labor Day. But yes, I hope you have a fantastic weekend and get to do what you want to do. Just a reminder that there is a coupon code for the Little Toon sweater if you're interested in that. Then there's also the free pattern for the sea oat socks, which I'll leave below. And if you want to test the sweater for me, I'll leave all that information below. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next episode, and maybe even later on in just a tidbit video of things that I'm feeling chatty about. But yeah, thanks for sitting and knitting with me. Have a great weekend.